Why Shelly is going to win Big Brother 17. So, it seems to me that Shelly is going to be the winner this season. She has a good standing in the house. She's in a power alliance. She's part of a power duo. She's winning HOH left and right, and she's only putting up Johnny Mac next to her targets. She's playing the correct way to beat the rest of the house this year. I say this year because the meta of Big Brother has definitely shifted over the years. It went from a social experiment about building trust and allies to a game about making the least amount of enemies as possible, getting less blood on your hands than anyone else, and making sure you aren't thrown under this unnecessarily referenced bus. Big Brother is now a matter of power alliances rather than power players. In my opinion, Shelly's a weak player overall. She sometimes lets her emotions get to her, example being not wanting to get out Audrey this week. From what I've seen, it appears Clay is making a lot of moves for her because she's scared, an example being asking Johnny Mac to throw yet another battle of the block. Now let's talk about Clay for a second. Clay and Shelly, or Shelly, have been seen as a couple nearly since the start, and there's no way that the people inside the house don't know. Duos, couples, showmances, whatever you want to call them, are a dangerous risk for everyone involved because you're basically announcing your loyalties to the rest of the house. Of course, being in a showmance does have its advantages. Some people would have never made it as far as they did without their pair, such as Emmett and Jillian from BB Can 1. Without each other, I doubt the other would have made it to the final three. All that aside, I think if Clay is not evicted soon and the duo remains intact, that Shelly has a guaranteed spot in finale night. Of course, this is considering the assumption that she will continue to play the style of game she has and not make any stupid moves. Now, Big Brother is really a joy to watch because people like to make big moves, which is kind of stupid, honestly, because when people say that big moves aren't happening or people are scared to make moves, it's because the big moves are detrimental to people's games. Take something from this season when Devon outed Audrey in front of everyone else. Sure, all the feeders were going crazy for a house meeting, and we all knew that Audrey needed to be exposed because she was playing really just a poor game in general. But honestly, I think Devon's demise came from this blow-up. Another example is when Cindy with an S came back in the house in BB Can 3. Spoiler alert, sorry if you haven't already seen the season. But when she decided to rally the troops to vote out Jordan, her showmance and seemingly closest ally, all for the sake of making big moves and wanting to get out Zach in following weeks, she was still voted out the next week because people saw her as a strong player because of that. And that's the one thing that scares people into nominating someone, seeing that they're a strong player. Alright, I got a little off topic there. Let's go back to what I said about Shelly winning as long as she has Clay. Clay will forever be her meat shield. He's big and strong. He will be seen as a threat far before her. And he has one fatal flaw. He can't stand the liars, as he said in the latest episode, and will out them, example being his fight with Audrey. Big Brother is a game about not showing your cards. Clay cannot keep his cards to himself. He isn't the worst player in the house, and I'm actually genuinely surprised with his gameplay after he declared himself a super fan in his pregame interviews. But Clay needs to learn to cool it because I honestly don't know how Clay will react to the whole Operation Jason incident. I'll link to that if you don't know what it is. And I've been slacking on the feeds myself lately, so I'm not 1,000% sure, but I think I'm at a good 90. So what does that have to do with Shelly winning? It's simple, I think. People will vote for Shelly over Clay. Clay hasn't won any comps. He hasn't made any moves, which is ironic considering my previous statements. Shelly's moves being getting out Devon, and this week getting out Audrey, which everyone will love her for. Moves are safe as long as you're holding your HOH key. It's fine for you to make moves then, but otherwise, just don't do it. It's a weird gray area. People, in my opinion, who will make the jury house this year have a pretty decent understanding of the game, and they will never view Clay as a better player than Shelly. I imagine the final three being Clay, Shelly, and John. John is going to be the perfect candidate to bring all the way because he actually has been loyal to them, and at least I think, and they're going to, at least they think, I should say, and they're going to have the mindset that nobody will vote for him in the end. Now, I'm personally a huge fan of the rockstar dentist from Scranton, but that does not bias my views about this. I'm just going to say this. If John makes it to Final 2 with Clay or Shelly, he will lose. Even though he played them all for the entire summer, he convinced them he wasn't a super fan and he had no prior knowledge of the show, people would still vote for either Clay or Shelly. Now, I honestly don't see a reality where Clay takes John to the Final 2, but I do, however, see a possibility of Shelly to do it. She may have emotional attachments to Clay, but I think she's still smart enough to realize that if she brings the Mac attack, her chances of winning are so much higher. Honestly, I do think Shelly versus Clay would be a close vote, but of course we'd have to see how the rest of the season pans out to know that outcome for sure. To conclude all my thoughts in this big ramble, which probably didn't make much sense looking back over it, I think if Clay remains in the house until about Final 8, Shelly has a huge advantage in winning more than all the other house guests. From what we've seen so far, Shelly is the only big showmance in the house, and seemingly the only pair of ride or dies left, excluding the twins, who will be very easy targets down the road for obvious reasons. So, if the Power Alliance continues and people don't separate this power duo, the house guests might as well hand Shelly the prize money now.